Hey y'all, this is the Mad Military Historian, and today's video is going to be pretty interesting. Today we're going to be actually looking at the most recent entry to the Call of Duty franchise, Call of Duty Vanguard, and looking at a particular level that includes depictions of the 93rd Infantry Division, and overall see what they got right, what they got wrong, and what they probably could have done better, or as well as providing context to some of the scenes that happen. Now, for a bit of context, outside of my life as a person that's really interested in military history, I also do other things like play video games. And though me personally, I never was really a huge fan of the Call of Duty franchise, the one thing I will give Call of Duty is that, unlike, ironically enough, one of my favorite franchises, Battlefield, Call of Duty does have a history of covering black units in World War II. In fact, one of their earlier games, Call of Duty Finest Hour, in the game, one of their levels has you play as a character named Sam Rivers, who is a member of the 71st Tank Battalion. Now, of course, the character Sam Rivers was loosely based on an actual tanker from the 71st named Reuben Rivers, who would do actions that would ultimately lead to him earning the Medal of Honor posthumously. So, the interesting thing about that fact about Call of Duty is that in the recent game, they kind of continued that tradition of depicting black units in World War II. And in this video, as I mentioned before, they're gonna be they have you not really playing as, but tagging along with soldiers of the 93rd Infantry Division as in the level that you play on Bougainville. Now, to basically summarize what I've seen up to this point, I have mixed emotions about it. And the reason why is because, according to what I've read up to this point, the level takes place in November 1943. The 93rd Infantry Division did not deploy to Bougainville really until March of 1944. In particular, the 25th Regimental Combat Team didn't deploy until 1944. So you have that aspect of it. Then you also have some of the other gameplay in the level that occurs. So while I'm not a huge fan of the time jumping and, shall we say, in the Hollywood-esque battles that take place involving the 93rd, I am also at the same time also happy that they did depict the 93rd. And the reason why is because, well, the 93rd doesn't have that much depictions in media in general. Like, in fact, if you don't believe me, go on the internet right now and try to look up books, movies, or TV shows or video games that talk about the 93rd. And I'm willing to bet right now probably only one book will show up. Either one book will show up, and if you're lucky, movie-wise, I think there was one movie that had a clip of one of the supporting characters was a soldier in the 93rd, but apart from that, there's really no depictions of the 93rd. So, like I said before, on the one hand, I am critical of some of the things I felt they could have done better on, but at the same time, I am happy that they did in fact choose to depict the 93rd Infantry Division. So, without further ado, let's go ahead and look at some of the clips of the gameplay. Of course, as I said before, I'll tell you what they got right, what they got wrong. Try to kind of tamper down on my literal mad military historian comments, and hopefully have a short video that's still entertaining nonetheless. So, well, entertaining and informative. So, nevertheless, let's get into the first clip. Okay, so with this first clip, we see the soldier of the 93rd, in essence, coming to the rescue of the player character. Now, a few things I find interesting about this clip is that, well, like kind of skipping over the Japanese camp. One, the soldier who comes up with the flamethrower. Now, would you see black soldiers from the 93rd carrying flamethrowers? No. No, you. In fact, if you look at newsreel footage of the 93rd going on patrol, you really see them carrying M1s, M1 carbines, Browning automatic rifles. Every now and then, if they're going to set up an ambush, they're carrying M1917s or M1919s and some mortars, but you rarely, if ever, see them carrying a flamethrower. Now, one thing I do like they got right in terms of the uniforms, though, is two things. One, if you notice, a lot of the background soldiers, including the soldier carrying the flamethrower, they're wearing HBTs or herringbone twill. And if you wonder what herringbone twill is, well, it's what I'm wearing right now. And like kind of an interesting side note, when growing up, and I don't know about anybody else, but if you grew up and you heard people saying, oh, well, they're wearing fatigues and stuff. Well, that term kind of comes from these uniforms, and the reason why was because prior to World War II and during World War II, really in the early days of World War II, your combat uniform was the same as your dress uniform. And the only time you would wear a uniform like this is when you had to do a duty that was really dirty. So like if you had to work on tanks or something like that, you would wear this uniform over your other uniform to keep the oil and stuff from getting on your uniform. Now in the Pacific Theater, in particular, the HBT became the uniform of choice for a few reasons. Well, one, unlike the other uniforms, it's relatively baggy, so you have more room to maneuver. It's a hard-wearing material, so it can last a long time. And also, it's relatively breathable. Like, because it's relatively breathable, it doesn't hold as much heat as other uniforms would. And in a jungle, that's very important. Another aspect I'd like to point out about the soldier with the flamethrower is that he's wearing a Daisy May cap. And Daisy May cap, it may look like a boonie hat, and in a way you kind of could say it was kind of one of the earlier forms of it. But the Daisy May cap was a cap that was initially issued out, but people, I think either they said it wasn't popular or something like that. So most soldiers would end up wearing patrol caps instead. But every now and then in pictures, particularly in the Pacific Theater, but in other theaters as well, you would see like rear echelon soldiers. And every now and then on a rare occasion, a frontline soldier wearing like a wide brim cap, and that's a Daisy May cap, like the guy with the flamethrower was wearing. Now, apart from the fact that the sergeant is wearing a jacket, he's wearing an M41 jacket, which really doesn't make sense for Bougainville because even at that time of year, it still would be hot. So it doesn't make sense for him to be wearing like an M41 coat. And then also him having netting on his helmet really doesn't add up because from all the footage and photos I've seen of the 93rd in Bougainville, they never really wore netting. And part of that, because the whole thing about the whole netting is trying to either break up your outline or at least like cut down on the shimmer of your helmet. And of course, in the Pacific Theater, like it kind of helped in some cases, it kind of didn't. But up to this point, I haven't seen any photos with soldiers from the 93rd wearing netting on their helmets. Now, one thing I will touch on that's pretty interesting is that the soldier with the flamethrower mentions that
we lucky they gave us ammo.
And I'm figuring that it kind of ties back into something that you also see mentioned in this level, which
better than loading trucks. That's the damn sure.
And in that clip, there's a mention of like, oh wow, they basically like this is better than basically loading trucks. I'm guessing that comment, along with the "you lucky they gave us ammo" comment, kind of ties in the fact that when the 93rd, in particular the 25th Infantry Regiment, when they were deployed to the Pacific, one of the first things that they had them do when they landed at Guadalcanal in 1944 was to do labor details. And really, that's something that the 93rd would ultimately be employed doing pretty much throughout the rest of the war. Apart from a few stints of combat here or there, particularly on Bougainville, Morotai, and a few other islands here and there, the 93rd was primarily employed as labor troops, and the reason for that had to do primarily with some comments that was made prior to the deployment of the 93rd, which was that we kind of leery about that, but we do need labor troops, and I'll kind of explain a little bit of that in more detail in a later video. So apart from that, let's go ahead and go to the next clip.
Sniper down. All clear. Not bad, Lieutenant. Move out.
What the hell? Why the ropes?
These crazy motherfuckers strap themselves up in trees.
Now, one thing I do find interesting about the depiction of this level is that while they may not get everything right, they do get, to me, based off the reports I've seen of combat for soldiers in the 93rd, they do get kind of what the soldiers are facing in combat in Bougainville pretty correctly, at least in this part of the level.
Pilfrey, your name's up.
Hope there's grits in heaven.
Now, of course, I don't think the guy that's basically about to go and run a sniper base is going to say, I hope they have grits in heaven. He's going to say probably something else that I probably can't say on YouTube because, yeah, I don't want to be as demonetized anymore than I probably already am for certain things. So, but the one thing I will appreciate that they get right is that the sniper aspect. And it's funny because apart from the major skirmish on Hill 250 in Bougainville, the other casualties of the 93rd, the other combat casualties of the 93rd Infantry Division would mostly occur through the snipers. And what happened is just like what happened in this level, where a Japanese sniper would basically climb themselves into a tree or get themselves in a high position, and they would basically lie in wait. And as soon as they saw opportunity, they'll take a shot and wreak havoc. And what really helped Japanese snipers was really a few things. Well, one, the fact that a lot of them would basically carry on a lot of shrubbery and stuff like that, try to help break up their outline. Because when you're sniping, it's not really about blending into the environment. That plays a role, but it's also about breaking up your outline as a human, because as humans, we identify other humans through human outlines, because, like, in a way, humans are kind of an oddity in nature. So because of that, we're able to identify others through human outlines. Another aspect that helped them was the type of cartridge they use in their rifles. Now, Japanese snipers would use Type 97 rifle, and which Type 97 was nothing more than a Type 38 with optics on it. And of course, if the sniper was lucky to have the same rifle and optics that was basically zeroed at the factory, you combine that with this special type of ammunition the Japanese would issue, where it was a type of ammunition that minimized the muzzle flash of their rifle. You combine all those things and you have a deadly sniper on your hands. And like a lot of soldiers, some of the soldiers in the 93rd, but also other soldiers in the Pacific Theater, they saw firsthand the damage that these guys could do. So, like, hunting out snipers and routing out snipers was one of the things that the 93rd did face in the Pacific in their patrols. So we'll go to 2 more clips, and then I'll basically make a wrap for the video. So this next clip will kind of cover what I do find interesting, and ultimately why they brought the flamethrower along. But I'll explain kind of the historical context behind it. So we'll watch this clip.
Jackson, get that pillbox! We're on cover fire! Go! Use that torch on the box! Light him up, Jackson!
do find interesting about this aspect of the film, not of the film, but of the game, they're attacking a Japanese outpost. Now, I'll explain with the last video clip what doesn't add up about this, but in the clip with the guy running through with the flamethrower and stuff like that, even though it's the player's character that's running through with the flamethrower, if the flame soldier didn't, the guy that was carrying the flamethrower didn't get killed, it would most likely would have been him doing the attack, which I'm figuring that's why they brought him along in the first place. Now, here's the interesting thing about that. Now, remember how I said before how the 93rd didn't really carry any flamethrowers? There was a case where the 93rd had to attack bunkers, but they didn't use a flamethrower. They used bazookas instead. And in fact, the reason why I find this clip interesting, because when I first saw it, the first thing I thought was, oh, that's supposed to be like Private Wade Fogey. Now, for those of y'all who don't know who Wade Fogey is, and I wouldn't blame you for not knowing because he's not really discussed as much, Wade Fogey was a private in the 25th Regimental Combat Team, 93rd Infantry Division, who was from South Carolina. I think he was from Anderson, South Carolina. He received the Bronze Star for attacking 3 Japanese bunkers, or attacking and destroying 3 Japanese bunkers with a bazooka. Like, I think from the way the description read is that basically they came under fire. He took his bazooka, he flanked the bunker, he destroyed one of them, he loaded up, he went, and he ultimately will end up destroying like 3 Japanese bunkers, and for his actions, he was awarded a Bronze Star. Now, of course, in Call of Duty, could you destroy a bunker with a bazooka? Yes, but let's be honest. When you're playing Call of Duty, it's like a Hollywood movie. Are you going to do it realistically, or are you going to do what's the most explosive and the most fun? Well, explosive and most fun is going to win out, and that's where the flamethrower comes in. So, but like I said, I do find that clip interesting that they attacked bunkers with flamethrowers. And like I said, don't get me wrong, flamethrowers were another effective way of attacking bunkers, but in the case of the 93rd, from the records that we have up to this point, they used bazookas to take them out. And in fact, there was one soldier named Wade Fogey who took out 3 of them, and he earned the Bronze Star for his actions. So I'll show this one last clip, and then I'll wrap up this video.
Let's see him stop us now.
Are you fucking crazy? Why would you fire that? You just gave the entire Japanese army our location.
The invite's not for them. It's for the rest of my men. Right on schedule.
Okay. How should I say this? Now, don't get me wrong. I say I know Call of Duty, and just like Battlefield, one of my favorite games, they're not going to get the entire battle right. They're not going to do everything historically accurately. But I would say this part was probably the most egregious, non-historically accurate thing they did. So, first things first, you see soldiers of the 93rd not only attacking an airfield, but attacking a bunker, attacking bunkers out in the open like massed troops. Now, I know there were some elements that wish the 93rd did that, but in reality, the 93rd would never did stuff like that. Now, what they have now, when they attack the airfield, they have tank support. Spoiler alert: the tank they have for tank support completely not accurate. Like, side quest, then I'll get back to this. So, in the Pacific Theater in Bougainville, they did use tanks. They did in fact use M4 Shermans, but the M4 Shermans that are depicted in in the previous clip, they appear to be kind of an amalgamation between an M4. It looked to be either M4A3 or M4A2, but it has it looks to be either the M1A2 76mm gun or 17. I think it's gonna be a 76mm gun, but the turret it has on there is the turret for the 75mm gun. Now, why is this egregious? Well, when you look at records of the Pacific Theater, in the Pacific, there really wasn't that many 76mm gun Shermans deployed to the Pacific, if I recall correctly. In fact, most Shermans that were deployed were either flamethrower tanks or the 75mm version. And why is that? Well, it's because the Japanese, most of the tanks that they would field were like light tanks, and a 75mm gun was sufficient enough to deal with it. And even taking in consideration out the consideration of the tank threat, because back then the U.S. Army, the idea of using tanks really wasn't to combat other tanks, but rather to use tanks to help support infantry as they advanced. The 75mm gun was the more versatile gun on the Sherman, because you could shoot armor piercing, high explosive, and a few other rounds out of it. And in the Pacific Theater, you combine the lack of the tank threat as well as the versatility that may be needed to attack either bunkers or structures. It would be just sufficient to use the 75mm gun with high explosive to take out that target. So, side quest over. Going back to the main thing. So, what really doesn't make sense about this aspect of the level is that when the 93rd was deployed to Bougainville, they were deployed to Bougainville. When they were deployed to Bougainville, all the airfields that were on the island were captured. And in fact, part of the reason why they were deployed there was in essence to provide security for the air bases. So for them to have some hidden Japanese airfield that needed to be attacked, okay, first off, the way the American island hopping strategy worked was simple. You take if the island has an airfield that can be used, you take it, and if it has an airfield that can't be used, then you starve it out. In this case with Bougainville, that's part of why we took Bougainville, because they had areas that can be used for airfields, and for them to have a plain as day airfield just hitting out there that wasn't attacked or anything, which to be fair, the airfield looks like it was attacked, but by that point, the airfield would have been captured early on as soon as they got there. And if not captured early on, they would have destroyed it to make it wouldn't be any use at all. So, and like I said before, the 93rd mostly did patrols and ambushes. There was no records in the unit records and the unit histories that showed that, oh, they captured the airfield. So, and not only that, but them getting into an open battle like that out in the open. So overall, what did I think about this? Well, as I said before, I'm mixed. On the one hand, I am happy that they depict the 93rd, because me personally, I've been studying the 93rd for years now, and I'm just happy that they actually depicted the 93rd. Now, at the same time, though, I wish they would have taken more care to not Hollywood up the story. Now, personally, do I think that they could have done it a little bit better? Yes and no. Now, in terms of certain aspects of the level, what would I tweak it? Yes. If they say, okay, well, Kale, the mad historian, we want you to help us with this level, what would you do? Well, for one, I would make it like an ambush level. Like, I would probably do the Battle of Hill 250. And of course, that would be both interesting but also controversial, because in that battle, that's where the 93rd and the Pacific Theater kind of was accused of cowardice under fire. So, me personally, I would do that level to kind of add aspects to it, and I would have it. The best way to describe, I would have it set up like that level from Medal of Honor Pacific Assault when they had the Japanese assault that ridge on Guadalcanal. I would have it.
Keep it up, Tommy! Nice one, Tommy!
set up like that and have it play out something like that, but with patrols. So another thing they could have did, well, they could have made the player character on this level Wade Fogey. Like, that would be an interesting thing. Like, not make it Wade Fogey per se, but say, okay, well, we got Fogey Wade. We got Sergeant Corporal Johnson or Corporal Carter or something like that, and like your objective is to basically eliminate bunkers that was holding up patrols or something like that. Like do a level like that and have it be a short level. Like you don't have to have like a long drawn out level, but of course that probably wouldn't work. But like I said, like I would have them tweak stuff like that. I wouldn't have the large scale open battle at the end. I wouldn't have the mass tank support and them capturing the airfield. I would kind of keep it simple, but still kind of add in the elements of the gameplay that was in there earlier. So I'll bring this one last thing, and I know I said the last clip will be the last clip, but I'll bring up this one more clip, and this will kind of be just a short explanation, and then I'll end the video. So
trees. What are we doing out here anyway?
Brad shipped in the 93rd to help the 23rd take this rock.
There's a Japanese base not far from here. It's protected by...
So, in that video clip, they pretty much... Like, this is actually a little bit early. I probably should have did it a little bit earlier. But in that video clip, they talk about the 93rd basically being there to in essence, relieve the 23rd. Now, this is the kind of a small pet peeve and stuff like that. And, like, it's kind of a blink and miss it pet peeve. Now, it's for two reasons. One, I think I mentioned earlier that the 93rd combat elements were attached to the 23rd, to the AmeriCall Division. That was true, but it was true, but not completely true. And what by that I mean that when the 93rd was deployed to Bougainville, in particular the 25th Infantry Regiment of the 93rd, the battalions of the 25th Infantry were attached to the infantry regiments of the 37th Infantry Division. And the field artillery battalions that were attached to the 25th Infantry to make up the 25th Regimental Combat Team, they were attached to the AmeriCall Division. Now, the second thing that kind of peeves me, that they refer to as the 23rd Infantry Division, and if you notice, I keep referring to it as the AmeriCall Division. Now, why I keep saying the AmeriCall Division instead of the 23rd? Well, during World War II, the AmeriCall Division, or American Units in New Caledonia, which that's kind of the abbreviation that leads to AmeriCall, the AmeriCall Division was created of units that were basically orphan units from basically National Guard divisions that were raised in World War II. And the AmeriCall Division wouldn't be referred to as a 23rd Infantry Division until after World War II. Throughout its time in World War II, it was just referred to simply as the AmeriCall Division. Now, of course, it still has the same unit patch and lineage and stuff, but during World War II, it was referred to simply as the AmeriCall Division. So, that's pretty much it when it comes to this video. I'd like to know what you guys thought. How did y'all feel about Call of Duty Vanguard, and particularly this level? Did y'all feel that they should have included the 93rd? Should they include the 93rd? Should they included another element, another unit of another black unit, or another unit in the game? And ultimately, what do you think? Now, me personally, I'll say this one last thing, and I'll let y'all go. One unit that they probably could have covered, if they wanted to cover black units in the Pacific, but again, that probably would be a little bit boring too, would be the 49th Coastal Artillery. And the reason why I would say the 49th Coastal Artillery would be probably a little bit more interesting than even, I hate to say, even the 25th, the 93rd Infantry Division, even though I dearly love the 93rd Infantry Division, is because the 49th Coastal Artillery Battalion, they actually arrived in Bougainville just in time to participate in the last major counterattack that the Japanese launched in like February, March of 1944. And in fact, the 49th Coastal Artillery Battalion, part of the reason why they were brought to Bougainville was because they had the 155mm long tom howitzers, and they were able to basically provide fire support. Now, how would you integrate that into a level? I don't know. Maybe you would have some of the guys serve as forward observers and they get caught up in and fighting the Japanese. I don't know, but that would be an interesting unit to cover. But as I said, I'm still happy that they depicted the 93rd, because that way there's something out there that's more recent and less obscure than the other depiction.